Why is it that the very ambition meant to propel us forward is often like the exact thing that guarantees we fail?
Oh, it's a painfully familiar cycle, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, you decide today is the day you change your life, right? You're going to master a new skill, reinvent your career, or, I don't know, finally get to peak physical shape.
Yeah, you set these massive trajectories.
Exactly. And you take that first a monumental step, but then almost immediately you find yourself staring at a literal ruined pot of gray glue in your kitchen.
Or gasping for air on a park bench.
Right. Gasping for air while a passing dog gives you this look of profound judgment.
Reality just snaps back like a rubber band and usually leaves us feeling way worse than before we even started.
So true. Well, welcome to the deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, yes, you, the learner, the chronically curious, you probably carry a lot of ambitions.
You're constantly trying to bridge that gap between where you are today and where you want to be tomorrow.
But that path is almost never clean. So today, we are unpacking a truly unexpected set of source materials to figure out the psychological disconnect between making a plan and, actually executing it.
And the source today is just a masterclass in hiding profound truths in plain sight.
It really is. We're looking at a transcript from a YouTube video originally designed for English language learners.
From a channel called Mr. English Channel.
Yeah, Mr. English Channel. And it features this straightforward conversation between two individuals named Paul and Emily. On the surface, it's just a simple vocabulary lesson.
But hiding right beneath the surface is this remarkably sophisticated exploration of goal setting.
Yeah, human psychology and why our brains actively resist the growth we actually crave.
It functions as this sort of psychological Trojan horse. I mean, they discuss highly relatable, everyday aspirations.
Culinary disasters, fitness attempts, career pivots.
Exactly. And without using a drop of academic jargon, they manage to map out the exact cognitive traps that derail our ambitions.
It's amazing. We are going to explore how that giant gray ball of glue and that highly judgmental park dog actually hold the secret to finally achieving what you set out to do.
But before we dismantle our failures, we really have to look at the foundational language we use to construct our ambitions.
Right. Because right out of the gate, our source points out a massive linguistic trap.
Yes, the semantic ambiguity of a single, highly dangerous word.
The word dream. I mean, in English, we use the exact same word to describe those involuntary, literal stories that play in our heads when we're asleep and our deepest, most active hopes for our actual lives.
Which creates a profound psychological issue. It's not just a quirk of vocabulary, it shapes our behavior.
Wait, how so? Like subliminally?
Yeah. When we use the same label for a passive nighttime hallucination as we do for our career ambitions, we subliminally train our brains to treat our life goals as passive fantasies.
Oh, wow. So we treat them as things that just magically happen to us.
Exactly. Rather than things we're actively responsible for building.
That makes so much sense. Because Paul, one of the speakers in our source, he actually jokes about this ambiguity. He tells a friend he had a dream about a giant cat.
A giant cat.
Yeah, and the friend is super confused and asks, "Oh, is acquiring a giant cat your goal for the future?"
That is hilarious.
Right. They have a good laugh because Paul explains he was just sleeping and giant cats were terrifying. But it perfectly illustrates the behavioral problem.
It really does. Because if your career ambition occupies the same linguistic category as a giant, terrifying sleep cat, your brain doesn't know it's supposed to take action.
It just leaves the ambition in the realm of imagination.
Exactly. It lacks the architectural parameters required for execution.
Which brings us to Paul's actual life ambition. He loves snacks. He likes to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But his dream is to elevate that. He wants to be a real chef.
He has the desire.
He does. So he goes into the kitchen to boil some simple pasta. Now, anyone who has ever cooked knows this should be a low-stakes entry point.
But without a framework, even low-stakes entry points become hazards.
Boy, do they. Disaster strikes almost immediately. Paul puts the pasta in the water, and then the phone rings.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's his mother. And as the source notes, she loves to talk. She talks for 40 straight minutes.
40 minutes?
Yeah. Paul completely forgets about the kitchen. And when he finally returns, the water has entirely evaporated.
I can practically smell it from here.
It's bad. The pasta has transformed into a giant gray ball of glue, permanently fused to the metal. It's so catastrophic he actually has to throw the entire pot into the garbage.
His grand chef ambition begins with a total system failure.
Okay, let's unpack this. A dream without a goal isn't just a harmless fantasy. It is an active recipe for a gray ball of glue.
Left unattended, it ruins the pot.
Exactly. Paul didn't fail because he lacked culinary talent.
Yeah.
He failed because he relied entirely on sheer willpower and memory.
Which are finite cognitive resources.
Totally. He had the desire, but he had zero boundaries, zero structural parameters, and zero plan. He basically threw pasta in a pot and expected the universe to turn him into a chef.
What's fascinating here is the core distinction the source material draws right after this disaster. Emily, the other speaker, she steps in and points out that a dream is simply what you want. It's the raw material.
Right.
But a goal is the plan to get there. It is the architectural blueprint.
Oh, I like that. The blueprint.
Yeah, it's the difference between pointing at a destination on a map and actually engineering the vehicle to drive you there.
Because a destination is entirely useless if you have no mechanism for forward momentum.
Exactly. And the source gives us a beautiful contrast to Paul's ruined pasta. Emily has this massive dream of her own. She currently lives in a loud, heavily congested city, working constantly.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. But she wants to live in a small, quiet house by the sea. She wants to wake up, see the blue water, hear the waves, and drink coffee on a wooden porch.
I mean, for someone stuck in a noisy city, that sounds practically unattainable.
It does. But notice the behavioral difference here. She isn't just treating this like a sleepy hallucination of a giant cat.
No, she's actually doing something about it.
Right. She has actively converted the dream into a goal by creating a house fund. Every single month, she systematically transfers a portion of her income into a dedicated bank account.
And the source describes this process in such a striking way, doesn't it?
It does. It says every time she deposits that money, it's not just saving. It is actively building a bridge from the city to the sea.
Every dollar is a physical brick for that beach house. That visual is so powerful because it takes an abstract, emotional longing and forces it into the physical world.
It demands undeniable architecture.
Yes. It fundamentally shifts the neurology of the pursuit. She moved from passive wishing, which, just spikes temporary dopamine,
to active construction, which builds lasting neural pathways of habit.
So for you listening right now, I want you to evaluate your own mind. Are your current ambitions just giant cats in your sleep?
Just weird passive fantasies floating around your prefrontal cortex.
Exactly. Or are you actively laying down bricks? Are you actually building a bridge to get there?
It's a heavy question. Because building a bridge requires acknowledging that the gap exists and then, doing the hard work to cross it.
So building this bridge makes logical sense. We need a plan. But logic alone doesn't explain human behavior.
No, it rarely does.
Why is it that human beings, even when we have a perfectly logical plan and a burning desire, still spectacularly self-sabotage on day one? Like, what is the psychological disconnect between making the plan and taking that first step?
It comes down to a massive miscalculation of scale. We drastically miscalculate what a first step should actually look like.
And that triggers something in the brain, right?
Yes, it triggers our brain's threat response.
It's like we try to power a whole city with a single AA battery, and the system just overloads and shuts down to protect itself.
That is a perfect analogy.
And Paul gives us a textbook example of this overload, because aside from the chef dream, Paul decides he wants to improve his physical health.
Oh, the 5K.
The 5K. A friend invites him to run a 5K race, and Paul makes this his short-term goal for the year.
Which is a great social initiative, but highly problematic given his baseline.
Right, because the critical context here is that Paul is absolutely not a runner. By his own admission, the only time his body experiences a running motion is when he's frantically trying not to miss the bus.
So he's essentially starting from zero.
Less than zero.
Okay.
But he has this 5K goal. So he puts on his shoes, goes out on a Monday, and attempts his very first run.
And we get the inevitable system crash.
It's brutal. He runs for exactly 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And his body immediately rebels. He feels like he's dying.
Of course he does.
His legs are trembling, his face turns the color of a tomato, and he has to collapse onto a park bench just to wait for his heart rate to drop out of the danger zone.
And then there's the dog.
Yes. To add insult to this physical injury, a small dog walks past him. And Paul swears this dog gave him a look like it was actively mocking him.
The perceived judgment of the park dog is such a great detail because it really highlights the psychological shame we feel when our output doesn't match our massive expectations.
But this highlights a terrifyingly common human flaw. We want the identity of the end result, and we want it immediately.
We want to be the person who casually jogs a 5K on a Sunday morning.
Exactly. So we attempt the entire identity shift all at once. And the source explicitly targets this overnight fallacy. Emily points out that she didn't become a teacher overnight.
She had to study, take exams, practice for years.
Right. Success, whether it's teaching or cardiovascular endurance, completely defies the override timeline.
And this is exactly where the source introduces the mechanism of baby steps. But we have to understand why baby steps work neurologically.
Okay, lay it on me.
So to fix Paul's running failure, the revised plan isn't for him to toughen up and push through the pain to run 10 minutes. The new plan is simply to run for 3 minutes tomorrow.
Just one additional minute.
Just 1 minute.
Wait, I struggle with this concept, and I know a lot of high achievers listening do too. Taking tiny 3-minute steps feels incredibly unfulfilling. If my ultimate goal is a 5K, a 3-minute jog feels like I'm not actually doing anything. Doesn't taking baby steps kind of kill your momentum right out of the gate?
It only feels unfulfilling if you are measuring distance. But on day one, you shouldn't be measuring distance. You should be measuring neurological adaptation.
Okay, tell me more.
Think about the AA battery analogy you used earlier. If you try to run the 5K, you overload the battery, and your brain associates running with intense pain and failure. Your amygdala registers it as a physical threat.
It's basically screaming, stop doing this.
Exactly. But a 3-minute run, that slips right past the brain's threat detectors. It lowers the friction threshold. You're building the habit of putting on the shoes and getting out the door without overloading the system.
So you're bypassing the brain's panic button.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this concept of baby steps is arguably even more vital outside of physical fitness.
Oh, for sure.
The source applies this exact same de-risking mechanism to a massive career pivot with the story of a woman named Sarah.
The flower shop story. This is such a brilliant application of the concept.
It really is. Sarah was working in a demanding corporate office. She was perpetually stressed, highly caffeinated, and deeply unhappy.
A familiar story for many.
Very familiar. But she had a dream. She wanted to be a gardener and own a small, independent flower shop. However, like most adults with mortgages and responsibilities, she was completely paralyzed by the fear of change.
Right. She reasoned, I have a stable job now. Why risk everything?
Because the perceived risk of the 5K was too high.
Yeah, quitting her job to open a business she knew nothing about would be like jumping out of an airplane and hoping she could figure out how to sew a parachute on the way down.
Precisely. The amygdala screams danger and shuts the operation down. So Sarah didn't quit her job overnight. Instead, she de-risked her ambition. She utilized a baby step to bypass the panic.
And what a remarkably smart step it was.
For 6 solid months, she kept her corporate job. But on Saturdays, she went to a local flower shop and offered to work for free.
Just to observe and learn.
Yeah. She spent half a year learning the unglamorous reality of the business. How to process stems, manage inventory, keep flowers alive, design bouquets.
She gathered empirical data.
And practical experience without risking her financial livelihood. And because she de-risked the learning phase, it worked. Last month, she finally opened Sarah's Sunflowers.
And the transcript notes that she is exhausted, but it's a good tired. She isn't corporate stressed anymore. She gets to wake up and smell the flowers, literally and metaphorically.
So for you, the listener, where in your own life are you attempting the entire 5K on day one? Where are you overloading the system and inviting the mocking laughter of that metaphorical dog when you should really just be asking to sweep the floors on a Saturday?
How can you de-risk your ambition today?
The vital question.
De-risking your ambition. I absolutely love that framing. So we've bypassed the panic button. We know we need a structured plan, and we know we need to rely on baby steps rather than massive leaps to build a habit.
Right.
But let's be brutally honest. Taking tiny 3-minute steps for 6 months or depositing small amounts of money into a beach fund over years, it is incredibly tedious.
It is. The novelty wears off fast.
Very fast.
Okay.
So how do we sustain the mental stamina required to keep executing when the initial excitement fades?
Well, sustaining that stamina requires engineering your environment to support your psychology, and the source starts with the physical environment.
Yes, the notebook.
Mm-hmm.
Paul decides he needs to get his goals out of his head. He physically buys a notebook and writes the title, Paul's Big Chef Adventure.
I love that title.
It's great. And underneath, he dictates 3 highly specific, actionable items for the month. Number 1, buy a beginner cookbook. Number 2, make tomato soup, specifically because, as he wisely notes, it is very difficult to burn soup.
Smart move after the pasta incident.
Definitely. And number 3, watch a fundamental cooking video on YouTube.
And, learning from the gray glue disaster, he implements a strict environmental boundary. Absolutely no phones in the kitchen.
But Emily points out that the real magic is in the act of writing it down. She argues that putting a pen to paper makes the goal real.
It ceases to be a floating idea and becomes a tangible contract.
Exactly.
What she's describing is actually a well-documented cognitive phenomenon. It's known as the generation effect.
The degeneration effect.
Yeah, when you actively produce information, like physically writing out a plan, your brain encodes that information much more deeply than if you merely think about it passively.
Oh, that makes sense.
Furthermore, it externalizes the goal. It takes the burden of remembering what to do next out of your prefrontal cortex. This reduces your overall cognitive load, so you actually have more energy for the execution.
Here's where it gets really interesting. To explain why this actionable written plan is so critical for stamina, the source introduces a deeply poetic yet highly practical metaphor. They call it the mountain and the path.
It is a stunning visual framework for cognitive endurance.
Emily explains that the reason people abandon their goals when the novelty wears off is because they are staring at the mountain, not the path.
Right. The mountain is the massive end state. The finished 5K, the Michelin star chef status, the fully funded beach house. When you stand at the bottom and stare at the peak, it looks impossibly high.
It induces vertigo and paralysis.
Exactly. But the path is just the very next step immediately in front of your boots. It's buying the beginner cookbook. It's jogging for 3 minutes.
This raises an important question. How do we stay accountable to that path? Because staring at the dirt 3 feet in front of you every single day can become profoundly boring.
Yeah, the brain craves stimulation.
It does. But the source provides 2 distinct psychological mechanisms to maintain engagement with the path.
What's the first one?
The first is actively celebrating small victories. Emily tells Paul to be proud of himself when he makes the soup. We have to train our neurochemistry to recognize progress, not just the final completion.
So literally giving yourself a high five when the soup actually tastes like tomato, instead of, just waiting until you were a master chef to feel good about yourself. Exactly. And the why behind this is crucial. Celebrating a small victory triggers a microdose of dopamine in the brain.
Oh, like a hack for your brain.
Yes. Now, we often think of dopamine merely as a reward chemical, but it's actually a motivation chemical. That hit of dopamine actively lowers the neurological friction required to start the next task.
Wow.
By celebrating the soup, Paul is neurologically fueling his desire to attempt the next recipe.
That makes perfect sense. Dopamine isn't just the prize at the end of the race. It's the sports drink you take during the race to keep going.
That's a great way to put it.
So what is the second mechanism?
Social accountability. The source explicitly advises telling one person about your goal today. Just one person.
Because when you say it out loud to another human being, it acts as a promise.
Yes. You are recruiting someone into your psychological ecosystem. You're creating an external safety net of expectation.
Oh, I see.
It is so much harder to quit when you know your friend is going to text you on Friday and ask, hey, how did the tomato soup turn out?
Right, you don't want to admit you were scrolling on your phone and ruin the pot again.
Exactly. That mild social pressure overrides your internal laziness.
Okay, so we are executing perfectly. We're keeping our eyes on the path.
Yeah.
We are generating our own dopamine with small victories. And we have our social safety net in place.
Things are going great.
But what happens if you have been diligently walking this path for 3 years, laying the bricks, doing the work, and suddenly you look up and you realize with a sinking feeling, you don't actually want to climb this specific mountain anymore?
This brings us to what I believe is the most profound revelation in the entire transcript. It addresses the crisis of the evolving self.
It totally caught me off guard. So we've been talking extensively about Emily's dream of the quiet beach house, right? Building the bridge from the chaotic city to the peaceful sea.
Right.
Well, she casually drops a bombshell. She reveals that 5 years ago, her dream was the exact polar opposite.
A complete 180-degree difference.
Yes. 5 years ago, she desperately wanted to move to a massive metropolis like New York. She craved the blinding lights, the deafening noise, the towering skyscrapers.
You wanted the relentless hustle.
And now she just wants to hear seagulls and waves.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you, by abandoning that initial New York dream, did she fail? Like, is that a failure of goal setting? Did she quit on herself?
Not at all. And the source addresses this with such incredible grace. It concludes with this brilliant insight. Our goals change because we change.
Our goals change because we change.
Yeah. It is not a failure to abandon a goal that no longer serves the person you have evolved into. As we accumulate life experience, our internal values shift, and our dreams are supposed to shift with them.
It is such a relief to hear that articulated. Because so many of us fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy with our own identities.
Oh, absolutely.
We invest so much time into pursuing a specific mountain that we feel obligated to keep climbing it, even when we completely hate the view.
Exactly. We lock ourselves into contracts we made when we were younger and less informed. And the source beautifully applies this logic back to Paul's fitness crisis.
Wait, the running.
Yeah, Paul is torturing his body and his ego trying to run a 5K. He clearly hates running. And Emily suggests, well, if you hate running, why not try swimming instead?
Because the core goal isn't actually about the biomechanics of moving your legs fast on pavement.
No, not at all.
The mountain is cardiovascular health. The path you take to get up that mountain can be running or swimming or cycling.
Precisely. You have to separate the core value from the vehicle. If the running vehicle is making you miserable and causing you to quit, just pick a different vehicle that still travels up the mountain of health.
Changing your vehicle isn't quitting.
Exactly. It is course correcting based on new vital data about yourself.
I really want to underline this for you listening. It is completely, 100% acceptable to change your mind. We grip so tightly onto these past versions of our ambitions, treating them like sacred, unbreakable vows, and we actively punish ourselves when our desires change.
But you're allowed to change.
You are allowed to want a quiet beach house instead of the chaos of New York. You're allowed to want to swim instead of run. Course correction is a sign of high-level intelligence and self-awareness, not weakness.
It requires the bravery to admit that the person who set the goal 5 years ago is not the person steering the ship today.
So what does this all mean? Let's recap the major psychological frameworks we've extracted from this unexpectedly brilliant language lesson. First, a dream without a blueprint is a vulnerability.
Don't let your ambitions become a passive gray ball of glue because you relied on memory instead of architecture. Convert the dream into a goal by building a bridge.
Second, reject the overnight success fallacy. Massive, immediate action triggers the brain's threat response. De-risk your dreams with baby steps that bypass the amygdala.
Run for 3 minutes. Volunteer at the flower shop on a Saturday. Build the habit before you increase the volume.
Third, manage your cognitive load by focusing on the path, not the paralyzing height of the mountain. Write your plan down to trigger the generation effect. Manufacture your own motivation by celebrating small victories to release dopamine.
And share your goals to weave a social safety net.
And finally, give yourself the profound permission to let your dreams evolve as you do. Separate the core value of your goal from the specific vehicle you use to achieve it.
I love that. It turns goal setting from a rigid prison sentence into a fluid, lifelong experiment.
It really does. Well, before we wrap up today, I want to hand it over to the expert for one final thought to leave you with.
If it is true that our dreams must inevitably change as we grow, I want you to critically examine the specific, massive dream you are holding on to right now. What does that dream say about who you are today versus who you were when you first set it? Are you currently exhausting yourself, running a metaphorical 5K that you hate, simply because you are chasing a goal that actually belongs to a ghost, a past version of yourself that no longer exists?
Oof, that is a heavy, necessary question worth sitting with this week. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it helps you stop staring in terror at the mountain and empowers you to start engineering the path right in front of your feet. Keep learning, keep course correcting, and whatever you do, well, don't let the judgmental dog on the park bench get the last laugh. We'll see you next time.